This is part 2 of my EDC Multi-tool project, in which I create a copy of my keys to go into the tool and modify the knife to conform to UK regulations. The key copying from scratch took a lot of work, as I'd never done anything like it before. I sealed the end of a cardboard tube and stuck plasticine to the keys as a funnel to pour the wax in later, and then stuck them into the tube. The tube was then filled with casting silicone and left overnight. Then I carefully cut the keys out with a scalpel. The resulting mould was very accurate and fairly strong. My first attempt at creating a wax copy was a total failure, as I used candle wax from cheap candles and that was very brittle, so the key wax broke as I removed them. I invested in some proper casting wax which worked brilliantly. I found that using a syringe to inject the hot wax allowed it to be injected under pressure, which is required when trying to get the wax to contour to the fine details of the mould. And I also cut a small vent hole at the other end of the mould. And this is the result. Then I tried creating copies of the keys from the wax copies out of aluminium, and to do that I needed to build a forge. And there were various recipes for foundry cement online, and I used a plaster of Paris and play sand mixture as advised by Grant Thompson. And look up the King of Random on YouTube if you're not already familiar with him. I fired up the forge and melted down some aluminium baking trays into this graphite crucible and successfully created an aluminium nugget. The second part, making the key copies, was much more difficult. The first attempt was almost as bad as my first wax copies, and the second attempt was not much better. So then I figured I could spend years figuring out what I'm doing wrong, or I could pay someone else to do it, and that's what I ended up doing. I found someone online who did an excellent job of copying keys from my wax positives, which I sent in the post, and it was only a few pounds to have them back, including postage. The car key worked straight away. I managed to unlock the door to get into the car, but the engine wouldn't start, and that's when I realised the key had an immobiliser in it all along, and copying it was a complete waste of time. It's worth mentioning at this point that I don't actually own this car anymore, and it's actually taken that long to get everything organised that I changed cars. The house key must have broken en route to the casting company because the brass copy I received was too short. So I had another one made with an extra block of metal at the hilt so I could shape it to fit into the multi-tool. And that's what I'm doing here. The steel saw blade I'm replacing from the multi-tool is apparently a windscreen saw, which I couldn't really envisage using at any time. It's designed to be removable from the tool. After I got the key to shape, I took apart the rest of the multi-tool. I used a Dremel to break off the end of the rivets and remove them using a pin punch. The knife blade annoyingly wasn't legal to carry in the UK according to the Home Office website, even though you can buy the tool in the UK. The blade is a few millimeters too long, so I had to shorten it, and that's why the tip has a weird nose shape. And there was a liner lock that I had to disable by heating the spring steel and bending it straight. I scanned a copy of each of the parts to remember the order they were in, and in case I lost anything I could recreate one later. I also took measurements of all the parts. Finally I put it all back together using brass rivets made from some 3mm diameter rod. The action's very nice and it has a nice click when it's opened. The knife blade's very stiff, so even though it's supposed to be a one-handed opener for use in gloves, it actually needs two hands to open it. This is what it looks like closed. And I was planning on attaching the torch I made in an earlier video, but after a few weeks of carrying it around I realised it was too bulky, so I removed the torch and made some custom scales. One side is purple heart as shown here, and the other side is paddock, which is a nice red coloured wood. The purple heart side needed a hand-cut groove for the toothpick accessory, which works surprisingly well. Thanks for watching.